It's supposed to stop, Ed. Take 30 seconds to reach the executive floor. Caleb Monroe stood in the corner, still wearing his maintenance uniform, his toolbox at his feet, his phone pressed to his ear. He had just gotten off a call from Maya's school, 7 years old, and already the world was asking whether his little girl had enough. The woman on the other side of the elevator said nothing. She just watched him. Caleb didn't know who she was. He didn't know she owned the building. He didn't know her name was Serena Vale, that her signature was on every paycheck in this company, that 300 people spent their mornings trying to predict her mood. He only knew he was exhausted, and the words came out before he could stop them. My daughter needs a mother tomorrow. That's what they're making me feel like being her father isn't enough. The woman went still. The next morning, she showed up at Maya's school, and when Caleb found out who she really was, he didn't feel grateful. He felt heartbroken. If this is your first time here, stories like this one are what this channel is about. Real emotions, real people, real moments that stay with you. If that's something you want more of, subscribe and come back. Now let's get into it. Caleb Monroe was the kind of man who set 3 alarms. Not because he was disorganized, because he couldn't afford to be late. 1 alarm for himself, 1 for Maya, 1 as a buffer. In case the first 2 failed, in case the hot water ran out before he finished showering, in case Maya woke up crying from a dream about her mother and needed 20 minutes of quiet holding before she could eat breakfast. He was 37 years old. He had been doing this alone for 3 years. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building in southwest Atlanta that had seen better decades. The hallway light on their floor flickered every time someone walked past it. The elevator had been broken since February. The landlord had sent 2 emails promising repairs and delivered neither. Caleb had fixed the elevator himself during one of his off days, using parts he sourced online and knowledge he'd built over 15 years of maintenance work. He didn't mention it to the landlord. He just needed it to work. Inside the apartment, things were different. The walls were covered in Maya's drawings, horses, stars, one ambitious attempt at a giraffe that Caleb had framed and hung above the kitchen table like it belonged in a gallery. The refrigerator door held her school schedule, a permission slip for a field trip, and a photograph of Aelina. Aelina Monroe had died 3 years ago, 2 months after Maya's 4th birthday, from a stroke that arrived without warning on an ordinary Tuesday. Here one moment, gone before Caleb could get to the hospital. He had spent the first year barely breathing, the second year learning how to be both parents at once, the third year understanding that he would never fully be both, but that being fully himself might have to be enough. Most days he believed that. Some days were harder. Maya was 7, small for her age, with her mother's eyes and Caleb's stubbornness. She was the kind of child who asked questions that stopped adults mid-sentence, not because she was trying to be difficult, but because she genuinely needed to understand how the world worked. Why did stars only come out at night? Why did some families have 2 moms? Why did her dad's hands always smell like metal? She had started 1st grade with a confidence that made Caleb's chest ache with pride. But by October, something had shifted. Her teacher, Ms. Patterson, had called twice, gently, carefully, to say that Maya had been quieter lately, that she'd started sitting out during the family drawing activity, that when another girl brought her mother in for career day, Maya had put her head down on her desk and stayed that way until lunch. Caleb had driven home that evening, gripping the steering wheel too hard. He knew what was happening. Maya was old enough now to measure, old enough to look around and calculate the difference between her family and everyone else's, old enough to feel the absence of her mother not just as grief, but as a gap, visible, public, undeniable. And he didn't know how to fix that. He could fix elevators and circuit breakers and busted pipe joints at 2 in the morning. He could not fix the look on his daughter's face when another child talked about their mom packing their lunch. Serena Vale was 41 years old and had not packed anyone's lunch in as long as she could remember. She was the CEO of Vera Holdings, a company that controlled 11 commercial properties across Georgia and Florida, along with a growing technology division that had attracted enough investor attention to make her face appear in 3 business magazines in the past year. She had built the company from a mid-size real estate firm into something formidable through a combination of sharp instinct, relentless discipline, and the kind of focus that required sacrificing most of everything else. Her apartment was on the 42nd floor of the Vera Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a kitchen she used primarily for coffee, a closet full of structured blazers, in colors that projected authority. She had a driver, a personal assistant named Deb, and a standing reservation at a restaurant downtown where the staff knew her order without asking. She had not been in a relationship in 4 years. The last one had ended badly. Not with a fight, not with betrayal, but with a quiet conversation on a Sunday morning in which the man she loved told her, without anger, that he had stopped waiting for her to choose him. He wasn't asking her to give up her career. He had just finally accepted that she didn't know how. Serena had nodded, thanked him for his honesty, and gone into the office. She had not cried until she was alone in the elevator going back up to her floor, long after midnight. That was 4 years ago. Since then, she had arranged her life to require very little vulnerability. It was not difficult. Vulnerability had never come naturally to her. What came naturally was competence, which she had long since learned to use as armor. The night everything changed began like most of Caleb's nights. He dropped Meyer at his neighbor Mrs. Ellison's apartment at 8:30. Mrs. Ellison, 72, retired schoolteacher, who babysat in exchange for Caleb fixing whatever broke in her apartment, which was often. Maya went without complaint, already in her pajamas, clutching the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2. "Sleep good, baby," Caleb said. "You too, Daddy," Maya said. Then, as he turned to go, "Don't be sad tonight, okay?" He didn't ask how she knew. She always knew. He drove to the Vera Holdings tower, clocked in, and spent the first 3 hours of his shift on routine checks. HVAC filters on floors 8 through 12. A reported water pressure issue in the executive restrooms. A set of emergency lights that had failed their quarterly test on floor 20. Standard work, the kind that let his mind run on autopilot while his body moved through the building's machinery. At 11:40, his phone buzzed. It was an email from Willowbrook Elementary. The subject line read, "Follow up, Student Wellness Evaluation, Maya Monroe." He stopped walking. He read it twice. The school had scheduled a formal evaluation for the following morning. A counselor and an administrator would be present. The purpose, the email explained, was to assess Maya's home support system and determine whether additional resources were needed to ensure her comprehensive care. Comprehensive care. Caleb stood in the stairwell of the 23rd floor and read those 2 words until they blurred. He knew what they meant. He had heard variations of this language before, at the pediatrician's office, at the parent-teacher conference last spring. A polite, professional way of asking, "Is there a woman in this child's life? Is there someone doing the parts of parenting you cannot?" He had always answered calmly. He had always left with the quiet weight of the question sitting on his chest. He called the number listed in the email. A woman answered, one of the school's family support coordinators, and explained the process in a voice designed to be reassuring. Caleb asked his questions. He listened to her answers. He said he would be there in the morning. He hung up and stood very still for a moment. Then he went upstairs to handle the electrical fault on the executive floor. The elevator was empty when Caleb stepped in. He pressed the button for floor 38. The doors slid closed. The elevator rose 4 floors, shuddered, and stopped. He pressed the button again. Nothing. He pressed the lobby button. Nothing. He was reaching for the emergency phone panel when the doors opened from the other side, and a woman stepped in. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back, wearing a charcoal blazer over a silk blouse. No jewelry except small gold earrings. She looked like someone who had been in back-to-back meetings since 9 that morning, and had somehow maintained the posture to prove it. This was Serena Vale, though Caleb had no way of knowing that yet. To him, she was simply a woman who belonged to the upper floors, whoever those people were. She glanced at Caleb, at his uniform, his toolbox, his face, and said nothing. She pressed the button for the 40th floor, where her office was. The elevator didn't move. "There's a fault somewhere between 34 and 38, Caleb said. "Probably a sensor. It'll reset in a few minutes, or I can call it in and have someone pull us manually." "Fine," she said. They stood on opposite sides of the elevator. Caleb's phone buzzed again. Another email from the school. An automated reminder about the morning appointment. He stared at it. He didn't mean to say anything. He had spent 3 years not saying things to strangers, not burdening people with a life they hadn't asked to hear about. He was good at it. He had turned it into a kind of discipline, but he was tired in a way that went past his body that night. He was tired down to something structural, something load-bearing, and when the woman across from him said, quietly, "Bad news," he made the mistake of answering honestly. "School evaluation tomorrow," he said. "They want to assess my daughter's home support system." She tilted her head slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means they want to know if I'm enough." He heard how blunt that sounded and almost stopped. He didn't. "My wife died 3 years ago. My daughter's 7. The school keeps using language like comprehensive care and additional support resources, and every time I hear it I have to translate it to what they are actually saying." "What are they actually saying?" Caleb looked at her directly for the first time. That a father alone might not be enough. The woman didn't flinch. She didn't offer the quick, compensatory smile he usually got from people when he said something like this. She just looked at him, and something about that, the absence of performance, made him keep going. He told her about the rent increase that had come in September, about the night shift schedule and how it meant he slept from 6 to noon, and then spent the afternoon with Maya before handing her to Mrs. Ellison, about the YouTube videos he'd watched to learn how to do Maya's hair. 17 videos before he got the braids right. And Maya had been patient with him through all of it. Patient in a way that broke him a little because no 7-year-old should have to be that understanding. About the time Maya had come home from school and told him that another girl said her dad must be sad all the time. He told her everything in the quiet of a stopped elevator between floors, in a building where no one was waiting for either of them. And then he said the thing he hadn't said out loud to anyone. "My daughter needs a mother tomorrow. That's what they're making me feel like being her father isn't enough." The woman across from him went very quiet. She looked at him, not with pity, he noticed, not with the charitable softness of someone taking in a hard luck story. She looked at him the way people look at something true. The elevator shuddered and resumed. Caleb straightened up, cleared his throat. "I'm sorry. You didn't need to hear all of that." "What's your daughter's name?" the woman asked. He blinked. "Maya and yours." "Caleb." The doors opened at the 40th floor. The woman stepped out. She paused in the doorway, and for a moment he thought she was going to say something. She didn't. She just looked at him one more time, the way you look at something you intend to remember. The doors closed. Caleb rode down to 38 alone and got to work. He didn't sleep when he got home that morning. He lay on the couch, he'd given Maya the bedroom, and stared at the water stain on the ceiling that looked vaguely like a running dog, and he thought about the evaluation. He thought about what he would say. He thought about Maya's face when she told him not to be sad tonight. He thought about the woman in the elevator. He didn't know why. She had said almost nothing. She had just listened, but there was something about being listened to, really listened to, without someone rushing to fix or reassure. That stayed with him in a way he couldn't shake. At 6:30 he got up, made breakfast and woke Maya. "Is today the school meeting?" Maya asked, still half asleep, her hair pressed against the pillow. "Yeah, are they going to decide something about us?" "They're just going to talk to us," Caleb said, "and I'm going to tell them we're doing fine." Maya studied him for a moment with her mother's eyes. "Are we?" she asked. Caleb put a plate of eggs in front of her. "We're doing real fine, baby. Eat." They got to Willowbrook Elementary at 8:50. The evaluation was scheduled for 9. Caleb signed them in at the front office, took a seat in the waiting area, and told Maya she could look at the fish tank in the corner. He was going over his notes. He had written actual notes on index cards because he needed something to hold when the door opened behind him. He turned. The woman from the elevator walked in. She was wearing different clothes, simpler, quieter than the night before. Dark trousers, a soft gray blouse, no blazer. Her hair was down. She was carrying a slim folder and a coffee, and she walked through the front door of Willowbrook Elementary like she had made a decision and had no intention of revisiting it. Caleb stood up without meaning to. She crossed the waiting area and stopped in front of him. "You told me she needed a mother today," she said quietly. "I'm not here to be her mother. I'm here to make sure they see she already has a father who loves her enough." Caleb opened his mouth, closed it. Before he could say anything, the school's vice principal appeared from the hallway, his expression shifting immediately into something deferential. "Yes, Vale," he said. "We weren't expecting you." Caleb heard the name. watched the vice principal's posture change, saw two office staff members straighten up at their desks. Vale, Serena Vale. He pulled out his phone, took 5 seconds to search the name. CEO, Vera Holdings, the building where he worked, the building whose floors he maintained, and whose circuits he repaired, and whose elevators he kept running. He looked at her. She was watching him read it. She didn't look away. He had told her everything. In a stopped elevator in the middle of the night, he had handed her every soft and undefended part of himself. His grief, his exhaustion, his fear that he was failing his daughter. And she had held all of it without telling him she ran the company he worked for. He felt the gratitude first, and then underneath it, something heavier. She saw all of that, and I didn't even know who she was. The embarrassment came quietly, the way it always did with him, not as heat, but as a slow, settling weight. The feeling of having been seen too clearly, from too far above. He thanked her, kept his voice even, told Maya to come sit down, and he built the first wall before the meeting even began. The evaluation room at Willowbrook Elementary was designed to feel non-threatening. Soft chairs, a round table instead of a rectangular one, a box of tissues placed close enough to reach without having to ask. The family support coordinator, Dr. Reeves, had the careful, measured voice of someone trained to ask hard questions without sounding like she was asking hard questions. Caleb sat across from her with Maya beside him. Serena took the chair to his left. He had not asked her to sit there. She had simply sat. Dr. Reeves introduced herself, explained the purpose of the meeting, and thanked everyone for coming. When she glanced at Serena with a polite, questioning look, Caleb said before Serena could speak, "She's a family friend." The words came out flat and final, and he didn't look at Serena when he said them. The evaluation began. Dr. Reeves asked about Maya's daily routine. Caleb answered, precise, organized, controlled. He described the morning schedule. Breakfast at 6:45, school drop-off at 8, Mrs. Ellison in the evenings, homework before dinner, reading before bed. He had the index cards in his jacket pocket, but didn't take them out. He didn't need to. He had been living this schedule for 3 years, and could recite it the way other men recited box scores. Dr. Reeves nodded, made notes, asked about Maya's emotional state at home. Caleb said she was happy, curious, creative. Said she had friends at school and a good relationship with Mrs. Ellison, and that she talked about her mother openly, which he encouraged. All of it was true. None of it was complete. Serena sat beside him and said nothing, but she noticed what he wasn't saying. The way his sentences ended just before the harder part began. The way he kept his back straight and his voice even, like a man being graded. The Caleb in this room was not the same man who had spoken in the elevator. Raw and exhausted and honest in the particular way people are honest, when they think no one important is listening. She recognized the performance. She had been doing a version of it her entire career. Dr. Reeves turned to Maya. Maya, can you tell me a little about what your days are like at home? Maya looked at her father first. He gave her a small nod. She looked back at Dr. Reeves. Daddy makes breakfast every day, she said. Even when he's tired, he always makes breakfast. Does he seem tired a lot? Maya considered this with the seriousness of someone who understood the weight of her answer. Sometimes, but he doesn't complain. He just does stuff. What kind of stuff? He learned how to do my hair. Maya said this the way she might say someone had climbed a mountain. He watched videos and everything. He practiced on this doll I have. He still messes up sometimes, but he tries really hard. She paused. He goes to work at night so he can be with me during the day. And he saves up money. Another pause. Last month he bought me new colored pencils, but I saw his shoes have a hole in them. The room went quiet. Caleb was looking at the table. Dr. Reeves made a note. Her pen moved slowly, like she was being careful. Serena looked at Caleb. The muscle in his jaw was tight. His hands were flat on his thighs, perfectly still. And she understood in that moment what this cost him. Sitting in a room while his 7-year-old described his sacrifices out loud. Not because Maya said anything wrong, because she said everything right, and it landed on him like an indictment instead of a testament. He heard the love in his daughter's words, and felt the weight of everything she'd had to understand too young. After Maya finished, Dr. Reeves asked if there were any adults outside the immediate household. who played a consistent role in Maya's life. Caleb listed Mrs. Ellison, his sister in Savannah, who visited twice a year, a coach from Maya's Saturday art class, and Ms. Vale Dr. Reeves asked, glancing toward Serena. She's new, Caleb said. It was not unkind. It was accurate, but the word new in his voice had a door behind it, and Serena heard it close. After the formal portion ended and Dr. Reeves stepped out to compile her notes, Serena leaned toward Caleb and spoke quietly. I can connect you with a counselor who specializes in children who have lost a parent. I also know a family services coordinator who could help you look at your work schedule and see if there are options. You've already done enough. Caleb's voice was low, measured, polite in the way that was worse than cold. Serena stopped. I mean it, he said. Coming today, that was generous. I don't have the right word for it, but it was generous. I'm grateful. He looked at her for a moment. But you're the CEO of the company I work for. I don't want my life to become something you're managing. I'm not managing your life, she said. I know you don't see it that way. Then how do you see it? He was quiet for a moment. I see a woman who heard a sad story in an elevator and decided to do something about it. And I understand that. I do. He glanced at Maya, who was drawing in a small notebook across the room, unbothered. But I've been on the other end of charity before. It doesn't feel like help. It feels like a reminder of what you don't have. Serena held his gaze. What I did this morning wasn't charity. I know, he said. And then quietly, that's what makes it harder. Maya broke the silence. She had looked up from her notebook and was watching both of them with the calm, uncanny attention of a child who had been reading rooms her whole short life. Are you really important? She asked Serena. Serena blinked. Why do you ask? Because since Daddy found out you're the CEO, he doesn't look at you the same as yesterday. Neither adult spoke. Maya looked between them, apparently satisfied that she'd said the true thing, and went back to her drawing. Caleb drove home with Maya in the backseat. Serena followed, because Maya had asked her to, and he hadn't found a way to say no that didn't involve explaining things to a 7-year-old he wasn't ready to explain. He pulled into the parking lot of his building. Serena parked beside him. The three of them went up in the elevator. The one Caleb had repaired himself, and he unlocked the apartment door and held it open. He watched Serena walk in. He had cleaned that morning, but the apartment was still what it was. A table with a scratch across the surface that he'd covered with a strip of wood veneer. Mismatched chairs. A couch with a throw blanket over the arm where the fabric had thinned. The walls bright with Maya's drawings. On the shelf near the window, a framed photograph of Elena, laughing outdoors, in a yellow jacket Caleb had never been able to throw away. He braced for something, pity maybe, or the careful neutrality of someone trying not to react. Serena stood in the middle of the room and looked around slowly. Not the fast, cataloging look of someone assessing. Something slower. My refrigerator has a wine cooler built into it, she said. I have never used it. It came with the apartment. Caleb didn't know what to do with that. I'm just saying, she looked at him. I'm not standing here thinking about what's missing. I'm standing here thinking about what's here. Maya appeared from the hallway where she'd gone to change out of her school clothes. She was wearing a t-shirt with a horse on it and carrying a deck of cards. Do you know how to play war? She asked Serena. I don't, Serena said. It's easy. I'll teach you. And that was how Serena Vale, CEO of Vera Holdings, ended up sitting cross-legged on a slightly worn carpet in southwest Atlanta, learning a card game from a 7-year-old who narrated every rule as if it were extremely complicated and extremely important. Caleb stood in the kitchen doorway and watched them. Maya was patient and bossy in equal measure, the way she was when she knew something another person didn't. Serena was simply present, not performing enjoyment, not doing the polite, managed version of attention that people used when they were somewhere they didn't quite fit. Just there, he made coffee. He didn't know what else to do. She came back. That was the thing Caleb hadn't expected. He had expected the elevator to be the whole story. A strange, compressed moment of honesty that dissolved in the daylight. He had expected Serena Vale to return to her 42nd floor life and file the whole thing under good deed completed. Instead, she texted the following evening to ask how Maya was doing after the evaluation. He answered. She asked a follow-up question. He answered that too. And somehow the conversation continued in the particular unhurried way of two people who are both a little surprised to find themselves still talking. She came to dinner the following Thursday. Caleb made pasta, the only thing he could cook without consulting a recipe. And Maya set the table with the mismatched plates and made sure the forks were on the correct side, because she had recently learned that was important. Serena brought flowers, not an extravagant arrangement, just a small bunch of sunflowers from a grocery store, the kind that came wrapped in paper. Maya put them in a jar on the table and declared they were perfect. Over dinner, Caleb told Serena about Elena. He hadn't planned to. He'd started talking about the photograph on the shelf because Serena had asked about it gently. And then he was talking about the yellow jacket and the way Elena laughed and the Tuesday morning she died, and the year after that he couldn't fully account for. At some point, he noticed he wasn't performing bravery. He was just telling the truth to someone who was listening. Serena told him about the relationship she'd ended, or that had ended her, depending on how you looked at it. The man who'd loved her long enough to realize she didn't know how to stay. She told it plainly, without softening her own part in it, and he appreciated that more than he would have known how to say. Maya fell asleep on the couch during a movie she'd put on after dinner, and Caleb and Serena sat at the kitchen table for another hour, talking about nothing consequential, until Serena looked at the time and said she had an 8 o'clock meeting and probably needed to go. At the door, she paused. "This was good," she said. Yes, Caleb agreed. It was. She left. He locked the door, moved Maya from the couch to her bed, and stood in the kitchen for a long time. It happened gradually and then all at once, the way most things did. Serena started appearing in the texture of their week. A Saturday at a bookstore, where Maya spent 40 minutes selecting one book with the gravity of a major financial decision. A Sunday afternoon at a park, where Caleb and Serena sat on a bench and talked, while Maya ran herself to exhaustion on the climbing structure. Small, ordinary things. Caleb noticed how Serena was with Maya, not performing warmth, not calibrating it. She asked Maya real questions and listened to the answers. She remembered things Maya mentioned in passing and brought them up later. When Maya showed her a drawing, she didn't say "That's so good, honey," in the automatic way. She looked at it for a moment and said something specific. "I like how you made the sky that color. That's not the color most people would pick." Maya had glowed for the rest of that day, and Caleb, watching all of it, felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years, which made him feel guilty, which made him angry at himself for feeling guilty, which was its own exhausting loop. He was aware, underneath everything, of who Serena was. He couldn't fully unknow it. When she mentioned a meeting or a decision or a trip, he felt the distance between their lives like a change in air pressure. Her world and his, the same city, different altitudes. He pushed the feeling down. He told himself it didn't matter. He almost believed it. Then she started pulling back. It was subtle at first. A text answered hours later with a shorter reply than usual. A dinner plan shifted to next week without a specific date attached. He told himself she was busy. He knew she was busy. She ran a company. He had no claim on her time. But Maya noticed. On a Friday evening, Caleb was making dinner when Maya came into the kitchen and stood beside the stove in the way she did, when she had something to say and wasn't sure if she should say it. "Is Serena coming tonight?" she asked. "No, baby. She's working late." Maya accepted this, set the table for 2 instead of 3, ate dinner, and helped with the dishes without complaint. It was when Caleb was reading to her before bed that she said quietly, "She's not going to stop coming, right?" He put the book down. "Why would you ask that?" Maya shrugged in the way that meant she had a specific reason she wasn't ready to give. "She's going to keep coming," Caleb said. He believed it when he said it. But that night, lying on the couch in the dark, he turned the question over and came out somewhere different. Serena had canceled twice in 2 weeks. Not dramatically, with reasonable explanations, but the warmth in their conversations had cooled a degree. She was retreating into something. He could feel it the same way he could feel a loose connection in a circuit, not visible, but present. A break somewhere in the line. He thought about Maya waiting. He thought about what it would cost his daughter to get used to someone, and then lose her. He thought about himself, how much he'd already let himself feel. He picked up his phone, put it down, picked it up again and typed, "Thank you for everything, but maybe it's better if we handle things on our own from here." He sent it before he could revise it. Serena read the message in her office at 11:47 at night. She was alone. The cleaning crew had finished 2 floors below, and the building was quiet. On her desk were 3 open documents and a financial model she'd been working on for 2 hours. And she had made no meaningful progress on any of them because she had spent the evening arguing with herself about a dinner she had canceled for no real reason. She read Caleb's message twice. Then she set her phone face down on the desk and sat without moving. She had done this before. This exact thing, found something real, and then manufactured distance because the realness frightened her. She knew the pattern. She had named it in therapy years ago, with the kind of clear-eyed self-analysis that unfortunately coexisted completely with the inability to stop doing it. What scared her was not Caleb, not Maya's. What scared her was how much she wanted to walk back into that apartment, how much she wanted to be someone who showed up reliably and stayed. She didn't trust herself to be that person. She had a documented history of failing to be that person. She was afraid that if she tried and failed, if she became someone Maya relied on and then couldn't sustain it, she would do damage she couldn't repair. So she had done what she knew how to do. She had started pulling away before she could disappoint them. And Caleb, being the man he was, had noticed, and had let her go before she could leave. She picked up her phone, looked at his message again. Then she put the phone in her bag, closed her laptop, and sat in the silence of her office for a long time. She let herself feel how much this was going to cost her. The second evaluation at Willowbrook was scheduled for a Wednesday morning. Caleb didn't tell Serena. He had made his decision and was going to stand by it. He packed Maya's binder of records, her health forms, her teacher assessments. He got her dressed in her navy dress because she said it made her feel serious. He drove to school with both hands on the wheel and his face arranged into something steady. Dr. Reeves welcomed them back. The room was the same, the tissues in the same place. This time there were 2 chairs on Caleb's side of the table, and the second one was empty. Maya sat down and looked at it. She didn't say anything. The evaluation moved through its stages. Dr. Reeves asked about the past few weeks. Caleb answered. He was more prepared this time, more composed. He referenced specific examples. He was good at this by now, the performance of sufficiency. When Dr. Reeves asked Maya if there was anyone she'd like to include in her circle of support going forward, Maya looked at the empty chair again. I want to say Serena, she said, but she's probably busy. Important people are always busy. Caleb felt it in his sternum. He was still sitting with that, the way his daughter had already built an exit for someone before that person even left. When the door to the evaluation room opened, Serena walked in. She was not in a blazer. She was wearing what she'd worn the first morning she'd come to the school. Simple, quiet, like someone who had made a decision about what this moment required. Her hair was slightly less composed than usual. She looked like someone who had left somewhere in a hurry. She looked at Caleb. He looked at her. Dr. Reeves looked between them. I'm sorry I'm late, Serena said, and sat down in the empty chair. The relief and the anger arrived in Caleb at exactly the same moment. He was glad she was here. He was furious that he was glad. He thought about Maya at the dinner table, setting it for 2. He thought about she's probably busy. Important people are always busy. He waited until Dr. Reeves stepped out to get additional paperwork. Then he turned to Serena and said, quietly and without enough time to make it kinder, you don't need to show up every time you feel guilty. That's not what we need. The color didn't leave her face, but something went out of her eyes. She stood up, walked out. Caleb sat in the chair he'd been sitting in a room that suddenly felt much larger, and stared at his hands. Maya beside him said nothing, but she reached over and put her small hand over his. And that was the worst part. Caleb didn't sleep that night either. At some point he got up and went to check on Maya. She was asleep on her side, one arm under the pillow, the stuffed rabbit tucked against her chin. On the nightstand beside her was a drawing he'd seen before, but not examined closely until now. He picked it up and held it toward the light from the hallway. 3 figures, a tall one with dark skin and a tool belt, a small one with braids and a horse on her shirt, and a third taller than Maya, not as tall as Caleb, with long hair and a very serious expression. Serena. Maya had drawn her in the center, not as a visitor, not in the margins, centered, her drawn hand touching the drawn hand of the small figure beside her. Caleb set the drawing back on the nightstand very carefully and went to sit on the edge of the couch in the dark. He had been telling himself a story. The story went like this. Serena Vale was a CEO. He was a maintenance worker. She existed at an altitude his life did not reach. Whatever genuine warmth had moved through those evenings, those conversations, those ordinary hours, it was inevitably going to run up against the reality of who she was and who he was. Better to end it before Maya got more attached. Better to protect his daughter from another loss. It was a reasonable story. It was also not entirely about Maya, because Caleb had built something in the 3 years since Elena died. Not wealth, not status, but a particular kind of self-sufficiency, a way of being in the world that required very little from anyone else. He had needed that. It had kept him standing when standing felt impossible. But at some point, that armor had started doing something different. It had stopped protecting him from loss and started protecting him from anything that could become one, which meant protecting him from everything, including a woman who had sat across from him in a stopped elevator and listened without knowing who he was or what she owed him, without any reason except that she was paying attention and he was speaking the truth. He had been moved by her that night. He had been moved by her every day since, and every time he felt it, he had translated it into suspicion. Charity, the gap between their lives made visible. He had looked at someone standing on level ground and convinced himself she was standing above him. That was on him. And Serena, he thought about the way she'd walked into Willowbrook that first morning, the way she'd sat on the floor playing cards, the way she'd asked Meyer about the drawing with real curiosity, the way she'd started pulling back, and then pulled back from her pulling back and shown up anyway, still late, still imperfect, but there. And he had told her not to bother. He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. He had said that to a woman who, for the first time in years, had chosen a person over a meeting, had left a room full of executives, and driven across the city to sit in a school counselor's office, because a 7-year-old had put an empty chair into a sentence. He had made her feel like a burden for trying. Serena's apartment was very clean. It was always very clean. She paid someone to ensure that, but she noticed it more that night. The surfaces blank and ordered, the kitchen untouched, the living room with its precise, expensive furniture arranged like a photograph of a place where someone lived rather than the place itself. She had poured a glass of wine and not drunk it. She cried eventually, not dramatically. It came quietly, the way grief that's been managed for a long time tends to come. A few tears she didn't bother wiping away immediately. A tightness in her chest that had been there since she'd walked out of the evaluation room. She thought about what Caleb had said. The strange thing was that she understood it. She had done the same thing, differently, had pulled back before he could see her fail. He had done his version and called her out of the room before she could disappoint them. They were both, she realized, very good at protecting themselves. They were both very tired of it. She thought about Maya's face when she'd walked in, the way the little girl had looked at the chair, and then looked up when the door opened. Not surprise, relief, a child who had been waiting for someone to come back. She thought about her apartment, the wine cooler she had never used, the view from her window that she had stopped seeing years ago, because you stopped seeing things you looked at alone for long enough. She wanted to be someone who stayed. She didn't know with certainty that she could, but she wanted it purely, without strategy, without calculating what it would cost her. She wanted to go back to that apartment with the mismatched chairs and the horse drawings on the wall, and be a person who came back when she said she would. She got up, poured the wine down the drain, went to bed, set an alarm for 6. Caleb was in the kitchen when he heard the knock. It was 7:15 in the morning. Maya was still asleep. He had been standing at the counter with a mug of lukewarm coffee, still in yesterday's clothes. He opened the door. Serena was standing in the hallway. No blazer, no heels, dark jeans, a plain cream-colored sweater, her hair loose and slightly less composed than he'd ever seen it. She was holding a flat white pastry box from a bakery Maya had mentioned once, offhand, weeks ago, the way children mentioned things they assumed were too expensive to actually have. She looked like someone who had been awake for a while and had made a decision in the night and was now standing in front of it. "I'm not here as anyone's CEO," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. I'm here as the woman who was in that elevator, who heard you tell the truth when you thought it didn't matter who was listening, and who has wanted to stay since before she knew she wanted to stay. Caleb didn't move. I pulled back, she said. I'm not going to explain it in a way that makes it sound better than it was. I got scared. I have a specific history of getting scared and using work as the door I go through when I don't know how to handle what's in front of me. I did that to you and to Maya, and I won't tell you it won't be something I have to fight against, because I think it will be. She paused. But I'm here, without a calendar excuse or a reason not to be. I'm here because this is where I want to be, and I've spent too much of my life not going where I actually want to go. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I told you that you were showing up out of guilt. That wasn't fair. You were scared too. I was, he said. I have been since the morning I found out who you were. Not of you, of what it meant. Of the space between where you are and where I am. I kept looking at you and seeing a distance instead of a person. He stopped. That's something I've been carrying a long time. Something I put on you. I know, Serena said. I should have. Caleb. She said his name plainly. Can I come in? He stepped back from the door. She set the pastry box on the kitchen table. He made fresh coffee. They sat across from each other in the mismatched chairs and talked in the quiet, careful way of two people who have each said the thing they most needed to say and are now figuring out what comes after. He told her about the drawing, about waking up and going to check on Maya, and seeing all three of them centered on a page in crayon. Serena pressed her lips together and looked at the table. She put you in the middle, Caleb said. That's a lot of trust to put in someone who canceled dinner. She's 7. She still thinks people can change. Serena looked up at him. Do you? He held her gaze. I'm starting to think so. They were still sitting there when they heard Maya's feet on the floor, the shuffle walk from the bedroom, the pause at the bathroom, and then the longer pause when she reached the edge of the kitchen and saw what she saw. Serena at the table, the pastry box, her father's coffee. Maya stood in the doorway in her pajamas with the stuffed rabbit hanging from her hand, sleep-crumpled and unguarded, looking at Serena with an expression that was not quite surprise and not quite relief but something in between. Serena turned in her chair to face her. She didn't rush the moment, didn't open her arms or reach out or do anything that would require Maya to respond before she was ready. She said, "Good morning." Maya looked at her for a long time. Then she looked at her father. He gave a small nod. She looked back at Serena. "You came back. I came back. Even though Daddy was mean to you." Caleb made a sound. Serena held her expression. He wasn't mean. He was honest. Those aren't always the same thing. Maya processed this. "Did you bring something?" "Chocolate croissants. From the place on Peachtree." Maya's eyes went to the box. Then back to Serena. "Okay," she said, "but I need to tell you something first." Serena turned toward her fully. "I'm listening. If you say you're going to come and then you don't come." Maya held the rabbit a little tighter. "It makes my stomach feel bad. Not like sick, like scared." "I understand," Serena said. "So if you can't come, you have to say so before, not after." "You're right. I will. And if you get scared." Maya said it without accusation, the way she said things she'd worked out on her own. "You can tell us. You don't have to just go away." Serena looked at this child, 7 years old, who had lost her mother at 4, who set the table with the forks on the correct side, and watched for whether her father was tired, and had already developed a precise, non-negotiable policy on the subject of people who disappeared without explanation. "I can do that," Serena said. Her voice had gone slightly unsteady. "She studied it. I promise." Maya looked at her for one more moment. Then she leaned over and put her head briefly against Serena's arm. Not a full hug, not yet. Just a point of contact, an acknowledgement. Then she sat up and said, "Can we open the box now?" They went back to Willowbrook together the following week. This time, Caleb didn't bring index cards. When Dr. Reeves asked him to describe his approach to parenting Maya, he didn't reach for organized, defensive language. He sat forward in his chair and spoke plainly. He said he was a good father, not with apology or performance, just as a fact he had decided to stop qualifying. He said he was also a tired one, and a human one, and that for a long time he had confused the two. He had thought that admitting he was tired meant admitting he was failing, and so he had not admitted it to anyone, which had not made him less tired. He said Maya was not a child who had been deprived of love. She was a child who had lost something real, and was being raised by someone who understood that you didn't replace real things. You made room for them alongside the new things. He said he didn't need the school to determine whether he was sufficient. He needed them to support Maya, which was different. Serena spoke next. She did not introduce herself as a CEO and doctor. Reeves did not introduce her as one either. Serena said she was new in Maya's life and intended to remain in it. She said she understood that children who had experienced loss needed the adults around them to be consistent and honest, and that she was committed to both, with the specific acknowledgement that commitment meant showing up when it was inconvenient and saying so directly when circumstances changed. Doctor, Reeves asked Maya if she had anything to add. Maya thought about it. I just want people to stop acting like my family is broken, she said. We're not broken. We're just different than some other families. What do you think makes a family, Doctor? Reeves asked. Maya considered this. People who come back, she said, even when stuff is hard. The evaluation concluded with a written plan. Maya would meet with a school counselor twice monthly. There were no concerns raised about Caleb's fitness as a parent. The language of comprehensive care did not appear once. Caleb signed the paperwork with a steady hand. 1 year later, the Vera Holdings building had a new daytime facilities supervisor. His name was Caleb Monroe. He had applied through the internal process, interviewed twice, and been selected by a panel that did not include Serena. She had removed herself from that decision chain before the role was even posted. When he got the call, he was in the parking lot of Maya's school, waiting for pickup. He sat in the car for a few minutes after hanging up. Not because he was surprised, he had worked toward this, but because he wanted to let it land. He had earned it. He knew that, but there was still something in him that needed a moment to believe the thing he'd earned was real. Maya knocked on the car window. He unlocked the door. You're making a weird face, she said, climbing in. I got the job, he said. The daytime one? Yeah, so you'll be home at night now, every night. She buckled her seatbelt. Can we get a dog? He laughed, a real one, the kind that surprised him. Let's talk about that. Serena was still the CEO of Vera Holdings. She was also, on Thursday evenings, the person sitting on the floor of an apartment in southwest Atlanta, helping a now 8-year-old with a school project on Georgia's state bird while Caleb made dinner in the kitchen. She was the person who had learned, slowly and with genuine effort, to leave the office by 6. Not every day she was honest about that, and Caleb had stopped expecting perfection and started expecting honesty, which was better anyway. She had learned that a simple pasta with jarred sauce was something she could make without burning, a fact that Maya had celebrated with disproportionate enthusiasm. She was also the person Caleb called when something scared him, not because she always had answers, but because she had earned the right to hear the things he didn't perform bravery around. And he had earned the same from her. They did not have a perfect life. They had 2 complicated lives that had agreed to occupy the same space. And that agreement required maintenance the way everything real required maintenance. There were weeks when Serena's work pulled at her in ways that revived old patterns, and she had to name it out loud instead of disappearing into it. There were weeks when Caleb's pride made things harder than they needed to be, and he had to notice it and set it down. These were not catastrophes. They were the cost of staying, and they had both decided the cost was worth it. On a Saturday in early April, Caleb took Serena and Maya back to the Vera Holdings tower. They rode the elevator up. The same elevator. Caleb stood in the same corner where he'd stood with his toolbox 18 months ago, and he thought about the man who'd stood there that night, exhausted and unguarded, talking too much to a stranger who turned out not to be a stranger in any way that mattered. Maya stood between them, holding both their hands, a habit that had developed without explanation and which neither adult had questioned. The doors opened at the top floor. They walked through to the rooftop terrace. The city stretched out in every direction, buildings and bridges and the slow green grid of the parks, the afternoon light cutting long and gold across everything. Atlanta in April, warm enough that you didn't need a jacket. Maya let go of their hands and ran to the railing to look. Caleb and Serena stood side by side and watched her. I used to look at this view every day from my office, Serena said. I stopped seeing it. Do you see it now? She looked at Maya at the railing, then at him. Yeah, he took her hand. She leaned her head against his shoulder. I didn't know, he said. When I was talking to you that night, I thought I was just saying too much to a stranger. You were, she said. That's why it worked. He was quiet for a moment. You know what I keep thinking about? What? The way you looked at me when the doors opened. Before you got out. He turned slightly toward her. You already knew you were coming back. Serena didn't answer right away. I knew I wanted to, she said. That's not always the same thing. But you did. I did. Maya turned from the railing. Come look. You can see the park from here. They went. The wedding was held on the rooftop of the Vera Holdings Tower. On a Saturday in October, when the Atlanta heat had finally conceded to autumn. Caleb had asked Serena in the kitchen of the apartment. On an ordinary evening, while she was helping Maya with long division, and he was washing dishes. He had dried his hands, turned around and said, I want you to be here. Not just Thursday evenings. All of it. Every hard week and every regular one. I want that with you. She had put down the pencil and looked at him across the kitchen. Then she'd said, I want that too. Maya, without looking up from her worksheet. Does this mean we can get the dog? The ceremony was small. Caleb's sister and her family from Savannah. A few people from Vera. Mrs. Ellison in the front row in a blue dress she had purchased specifically for the occasion. The terrace strung with lights. The city glittering below. Maya stood between them at the altar in the dark red dress she had chosen herself, holding the rings on a small velvet cushion with the focused expression of someone entrusted with something important. When the moment came, she placed Caleb's hand in Serena's. She looked up at both of them. Okay, she said. Now nobody has to pretend to be anything. Caleb laughed through tears he hadn't expected. Serena pressed her free hand over her mouth for a moment, then lowered it, and the smile that came through was the kind that didn't know what to do with itself. The officiant wisely stayed quiet. Caleb looked at Serena, this woman who had walked into a stopped elevator and paid attention, who had shown up at a school when she didn't have to, who had learned to come back instead of disappear, who had sat on a carpet and learned a card game and asked his daughter real questions. He looked at Maya, already reaching up to hold both their hands at once. He thought about that night in the elevator. A man too tired to keep the truth inside. A sentence that had escaped before he could catch it. My daughter needs a mother tomorrow. He hadn't been asking for anything. He had only been exhausted and honest briefly, in a stopped box between floors. But honesty, it turned out, had a way of finding the people who needed to hear it. He looked at his family. The words that came to mind were the same ones he'd said to Meyer on 100 ordinary mornings. We're doing real fine, baby. For the first time in a long time, he believed them completely. Some people walk into your life through a grand entrance, and some walk in through a stopped elevator in the middle of the night when you're too tired to pretend. Caleb didn't ask for rescue. He just told the truth. And that one moment of honesty, unguarded, unplanned, changed everything. That's the thing about letting yourself be seen. You never know who's actually paying attention. If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you want more stories like this one, about ordinary people, real love, and the quiet courage it takes to stay, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more where this came from.